Well, hello there. This is Louis, aka Louis the Frenchie Louis the Frenchie Monette, and you are listening to the Frenchie Talks About. On today's episode, Louis, aka Frenchie. Wow, I'm so tired, and this is bad. Okay, now I'm gonna edit it out. All right, give me a second. I'm just gonna do a pause, and we'll restart, and I'll just edit the first 25 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
Been a long day.
I feel that. Don't even worry about it, man.
All right, so 5, 4. Well, hello there. This is Louis, aka Louis the French Monette, and you are listening to Frenchie Talks about mental strength and self discipline. Now, on with me today is Mr. Orlando Hall. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, good. Apparently, do not know how to speak. It's been a long day, but I'm happy to have you on, sir. Especially this topic. When I was going through the potential people I can have on my show, you responded to one of my posts for another subject that's already booked. But when I saw that you were a real life Marine, I said to myself, "There's definitely one thing I do not have in my life is self discipline and mental strength in certain areas of my life." And I definitely was curious about someone who actually lives in basically professional self-discipline.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really happy to have you on. Before we go directly into the meat of the conversation, I am curious, Mr. Hall, how did you start? Why did you become a Marine or just military in general?
Well, growing up, I had a very military kind of background, so it always occurred to me that personal sacrifice and helping others was just in my nature. So
Hmm.
during the military, I was like, go big or go home, Marine Corps, right?
Yeah, for sure. And for, you see a lot on TV, on movies. So there's a bit of like what people constructed in their head. But I want you to talk about once you're in it, you're in the Marines or in the military. What was it like for real? What was a reality shock?
So the big reality shock is literally the first day. You're up for like 72 hours. They strip you down to nothing and they try to rebuild you within this 3 months to be that Marine that everyone sees on TVs or the people you may know like that.
Okay, and for those who don't necessarily understand what a Marine is, because it's particular, there's just a certain number of people that go through that experience. What is it to be a Marine in your best description?
What is it to be a Marine? Oh, okay. So Marines, like if you go back in history, is like also known as the naval infantry, but it's typically an infantry force that specializes in support of the naval and army operations. So, a Marine, in my opinion, is anybody that serves and protects in the best possible way and never gives up.
Mm. Yeah, and that goes with our subject, never giving up. It's always having that drive, never seeing it as impossible, but there's always a way. And that really requires to be in a mental state that, most people will never even get close to because it's hard. You're going against all the your natural instincts, right?
Yes, exactly. Mental stability is like the most important factor into going into the military as a whole because you might have to choose to go to war, might have to choose to save people. So you have to be
Mm.
mentally tough to even endure facing that reality.
Yeah, and like, did you have that mental strength at the beginning enough, or is this really something that i- is really learned from the beginning, and no matter what your level of strength is, it doesn't matter. It's what the melty shows you.
Oh, absolutely not. I did not have that mental strength going into it. My mental strength was just taking it day by day. I just have to survive the day and I'll get
Mm.
to the next day. That's what I had in my mind. Those days turn into weeks, those weeks turn into months, those months turn into years. And before I knew it, I can pretty much endure anything I set my mind to because of that small steps that I learned from the beginning.
Yeah, it's and sure, it is a day by day thing at first, right? And learning something new is never easy, and those days can feel like years, right? But once you pass that and you're starting to almost see the normality into your new reality. There's a lot of things you can endure that you would never expect to be able to endure, I'm guessing, right?
Mhm. Oh yes, 100%. Because the basis around it is being comfortable, being uncomfortable. We don't really have that baseline to stop. We go through a whole year. We go through a workup. We get new guys. We go on deployment. Those new guys leave for old guys, and it recycles, but it's always different. So that
Mhm.
uncomfortable feeling is actually our comfort zone.
And how do you get used to that though? Because I love my comfort, right? There's a reason why I don't have the mental strength in certain aspects. I love my comfort. How is it to live uncomfortably and still be happy?
Yeah, see, this is a very hard subject because seeking discomfort is literally going against everything you know or everything you go for. So I
Mm,
don't really know the answer to that because I'm still trying to figure it out in 8 years in the Marine Corps, and the uncomfortable feeling is the only way I feel comfortable because I think just because we're breaded with uncomfortable situations throughout this long is actually made us comfortable with it.
yeah, and like let's say like it applied in real life, right? Where it's not all about the uncomfortable and the situations that you have to choose life making decisions, right?
Mhm, mhm.
This is interpersonal relationships and stupid neighbors and all the mundane shit we live through on a daily basis. How does one live in comfort in the uncomfortable and adapt to everyday life?
So you're talking about adapting from the Marine Corps into, let's say, the civilian world, or you're
Y-
talking about accepting the uncomfortable lifestyle of the Marine Corps?
Accepting the uncomfortable lifestyle, that the mental strength that's given to you but applied in with people that don't really understand your perspective and do not live with that uncomfortable comfort.
Oh, okay. So the only way you can get comfortable with this is literally brotherhood. You have shared experience. It doesn't matter where you come from, your background, anything. You're going through
Mm.
the same crappy things, but you're doing it together. And knowing that you're doing that together will make everything else better.
Yeah, true. And it's like in everything in life is finding somewhere you belong, right? Finding others that understand your story and you understand their story. And no matter what happens outside of that, there's always somewhere you can be that you will be understood no matter what.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I get that with podcasting community, but it's applicable in any facet.
Yes, I completely agree. That brotherhood and that shared experiences make you comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it kind of makes you feel like if I could handle this, which is like the worst portion of my life,
Mm,
everything else would be better. Like
mm.
nothing can make me as uncomfortable as this moment. And if you compare this moment to everything else, your life will be easy.
Yeah, I mean, like how can I say this? At first, someone who starts running, like, and they're not in shape. They're like, "Shit, man! It's been half a kilometer, and I'm sweating balls, and I don't want to do this anymore." But next thing if you're able to do a marathon or been running for 3 hours, you realize, man, this was nothing. And if I'm able to do a marathon, imagine what else I can do, right? So it
Exactly.
just how far you push yourself. Now, I am curious. You push yourself from the beginning. It was imposed on you that this is your new life. You said your first 72 hours, they kind of strip yourselves. Are you able to talk about the process a bit and give a step by step of your recall of those first 72 hours and what you were thinking while living it?
Oh yeah, I can tell you. So the first 72 hours, you get stripped mentally and physically. You're literally stripped of all your clothes and all of your belongings. And
Hmm.
you're stripped down, you're washed, you get your hair cut, and you're issued new clothes, you're issued new bags, you're issued everything new from the beginning. So whatever you known or whatever you liked, you don't even have anymore. My mental state at that moment was, wow, I am a 17 going on 18-year-old child around all these grown men that decide to put their lives on the line. And I'm
Mm,
just saying, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. And after
mm.
72 hours, like I said, you're getting blood draws, you're getting your teeth cleaned, or you're getting your teeth done, you're getting your hair cut. Everything is getting stripped away, and you're starting a whole new life all over again.
And I mean, like, there's a lot of stereotypes we see on in the movies, like uh, the Stanley Kubrick movie. Hello, I forgot the name of the movie, but there's a couple of scenes that you see, like the drill sergeant, etc. I'm guessing that's more in movies, right? Could you explain a bit what happens with like the superiors? Do they really like insult you that much, or do they have their own process to break you in their own way?
So every leader is different.
Mm,
I have seen some leaders that insult you and break you down to like try to push you past your point. But most of the time, each leader has an individual way to break you down and build you up at the same time. In the
mm,
movies, yes, it is very accurate. They're yelling, they're in your face, they're throwing things. They're trying to make you as uncomfortable as possible. They're trying to break that barrier that you have on yourself to make you into something better, the best you that can be.
mm. And when you know, do you know you've been rebuilded, or do you realize it afterwards that
Oh,
the process has been going on?
the second you graduate from boot camp, you realize the true realization sits in how people look at you, how you think, how you talk, how you walk. Everyone sees those little minute differences and they tell you about it. And it's normal to you because you've been going through this for the past 3 months. But
Hmm.
that's when realization sets in.
Okay. And to be in order to do that kind of strength, right? That kind of like mental change to really be disciplined and be broke down. Do you have to accept it? Is there moments you're like, okay, I have to let my old self go, or do you just let it go unconsciously?
No, it's a very conscious choice because there are people that try to hold on to a resemblance of their old selves while in boot camp, and those people never fail. You have to accept the change and you have to trust the process in order for you to become a better person. So
Hmm.
me accepting it from the beginning, I think my experience was a lot different from a lot more people that had it harder or had a more difficult time adjusting to this lifestyle.
And yeah, everyone is different, right? We all adapt differently,
Yes.
but it comes to the same that you have to be someone else. I'm guessing you saw people who didn't make it, right? Is it because they didn't have the mental strength? Is it possible some people just don't have the capacity to have that kind of mental strength, or they just never permitted themselves to get that mental strength?
Oh, it's a plethora of reasons. Like all of those reasons are 100%. Marine Corps especially, it's a very low acceptance rate. So I started with a certain number and I you can take out more than half of that and that's how many graduated. So
Hmm.
if you failure to adapt or if you can't take the strain of the constant working every single day, even on the weekends, not having like any cellular phone or any contact with the outside world instead of just letters, like people can't take stuff like that. So yeah, it's a huge mental part and physical as well.
Yeah, and sacrifice. You said it's sacrifice to be in to attain perfection. The ego must be set aside, and for the ego must be set aside, you cannot think about yourself. You have to think about the end goal, right? Which
Yes.
is being the best in your sport, the best in your career or anything. If you want to be the best, if you want to be in an echelon that is above, the self does not exist.
Yeah, it does not truly because even after that 3 month period, you have to realize that that's just the beginning. You still have training, you still have schools, you still have deployments. Like that's just the very first step into the door, and it's a continual incline, and there's no stops.
Now, I'm curious, like for someone who, pretty much attained the summit of self-discipline and really set a career on, order itself, is there things that even with all the training, and I'm talking about like just everyday stuff, is there things that you still have a hard time, disciplining yourself to do, even though you've been through so much?
Oh, 100%. Recently, I just had a kid about 2 years ago,
Mm,
and to get out of the mental state of having junior Marines and teaching and mentoring them into stepping back and having a child do I have to nurture and being a caring, loving father. It's a huge thing to have discipline to do that. And sometimes I catch myself, I'm like, oh yeah, you're a child. You can't relate.
yeah, it's like yelling at a baby who's gonna make her cry more, you know.
Yeah, you can't do stuff like that. You can't just be like, hey, you don't understand, go do some push-ups or something. Like you can't maybe.
Yeah, and I just had my 4 month-year-old. She's going on 5 months right now, and it's an interesting experience. I mean, there's times that things are not always equal. I am known as the lazier one, right? My girlfriend gets annoyed when there's dishes. I'm like, I can live with mounting the dishes. I don't care. But her, she needs to do it, right? But
Yeah.
it's a whole different game. Like you you can ignore dishes. You can't ignore your kid, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And
yeah.
being in the Marine Corps, you're used to structure and
Mm.
everything being at the right time at the right place, and having discipline to know that your kid is pure chaos. It's something that's like you can't really put words.
But and although it must be interesting at the age you have your kid now, your kid's age, I should say, it's chaos at the beginning. But are you seeing certain things like evolve because of your teaching style, that you kind of see a bit of the military into your kid more she advances, or it's still too young for that?
Oh yes, I 100% see it because how I would teach somebody in the military would be teaching why this thing is and how it works, and
Mm,
translating that into a child is a lot easier for their development and their growth instead of just
mm,
saying this is why this is because I said so.
mm. Yeah, this is okay. So, and that does sound like a good way to teach, right? I should learn some notes here and there, because I am a call center director, and sometimes I just don't have the mental strength to explain why I want things to be done. I
Exactly.
just do it that way because right now it has to be done. But it takes a lot of energy just to show that aspect, right?
Oh,
Uh,
it's exhausting.
yeah, because you have to be on your A game to be able to translate it properly for someone else to understand. And we all learn differently, right? So to be able to translate that takes a lot of mental energy and just like focus, which most people, like it or not, we don't always have that focus. There's things that can
100%.
happen that just disrupts it, right?
Yes, 100%. Like the only truly way that you can know somebody fully understands something is if they can teach it back to other people that don't understand it, in my personal opinion.
No, that is true. That really is true. That and certain people, that's what the interesting is thing with, right, with discipline, is they all have this, not the same rate. They all understand differently, depending on their background, on like education, but life experience as well. And I've seen, like, at work, there's people like you show them once and they got it right,
Oh
and they
yeah.
never falter, and they're always on point. But there's other downsides to them. You're like, okay, we have to work on this. And the flip side is like, you know, do we serve this and this? Like, no, but I've also told you 8 times during the week now,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and yet they're always on time and even like offer to stay 2 hours later, right?
Yeah.
So we're all different. How do you cope? Like, how do you eventually like stack people in certain, structures that you apply if they're personality A, personality B, personality C, or how do you like adapt to different types of personalities when it comes to teaching?
When it comes to teaching, you just have personally, I find out what their learning style is. Some people learn visual, some people learn auditory, and some people are kinetic, which means like they have to be a hands-on. So once
Mm,
you find how they learn, then your teaching is a whole lot easier. The process is a lot easier. I can teach somebody how to build a car, or
Mm.
I can show them how to build a car. Those are two different types of teaching methods, but it's two different types of learning as well.
No, true. And if you only specialize in one thing, you can only train one type of person, like it or not. So it is important to inflate inside of you and try to realize, like, am I able to show all three kinds of way, right? Because it's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm good in kinetic. I'm good in visual. I'm not good in the other type, right? So how do you start, trying to develop a teaching style that you're not necessarily in tuned with?
Well, to it depending on the group size that you're teaching. So if you're teaching like let's say 10 or more and you don't know these people, so the best course is to go with all three methods broken down in different parts. You can do auditory and visual at the same part and then do your kinetic learning after, like a
Hmm.
practical application type deal.
Okay, but I mean, let's say you're audio and visual, right? You're good at that, but kinetic, you don't really know how to approach kinetic. It's the first time you've even tried doing kinetic. How do you try to teach kinetic if you don't understand it fully? So how do you get better at something you trying to teach, but you haven't mastered yourself? Is what I'm asking.
Repetitions. There's no such thing as perfection, obviously, but you can get as close to perfect as possible with repetition. I think it was, I forgot. I think it was Kobe Bryant that said it. He said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, but
Mm.
it's only 1,000. You're not a master of anything until you do it for 1,000 times. So 1,000
Mm.
times of your repetition will make you a master of that craft or a master of that teaching method."
Yeah, and to be able to master it and do repetition, right? You do need this determination and willingness to go down a road that is very always the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to accept that it's a choice, right? Because for example, like, again, I'm known dishes and me are not friends, right? And
Mm.
I've been talking with a behavioral therapist about that, and it really stems with what my brain associates. It often said, I must, and not about like what I wanted to do. It was more of an obligation because it was forced upon me, right?
Mm.
So I don't have this repetition because my mind often blocks on it. It doesn't want to compute because it sees it almost as a trauma more than something that I have to go through to establish a certain rhythm in my life.
Mhm.
Now, how do you go against something sometimes? You have to do a repetition, but your brain sometimes takes a hold of yourself and your ego just leads the way and really makes you not do those things. How do you fight that unconscious ego?
Well, you said it earlier with the word discipline. That discipline in you to know that what you have to do and what you have to accomplish has to push past all your natural reactions. So
Mm.
your mental state and your discipline, it is the same exact thing, because once you're mentally strong, the discipline is going to be there. Going against your natural reactions is something you have to consistently train to do, because you're always going to take the easiest route. You're always going to do the road that's more um the road that's always taken. So you have to fight that mental battle before you can fight that physical battle. And going through that is just one step at a time. Like I said before, just knowing that, hey, I have to do this, and I know for a fact that I don't want to do this, but how good is it going to feel after it's done?
Yeah, exactly. And my behavioral therapist said the same thing. Exactly. Like, you have to almost imagine how you'll feel after, right? It's
Yes.
it's not always about what you have to do, but it's about the journey and where you're at after you've accomplished that journey and visualizing that. And that kind of makes your brain feel a certain way, and it kind of like loops it up to be easier to do it. I I understand the concept, still haven't found exactly how to get to there. But
Yeah.
realizing it is the first step, right? And then analyzing it while you're living in a moment, because it happened to me often. Let's say, for example, dishes, right? I don't know if it's my ADD in me, or just that's how the trauma is big with since I'm young. But sometimes I'll start doing dishes, right? I'll have a couple of things, I'm wiping, and next thing you know, I don't even realize it myself, I'm playing PS4. And then I'm like, what happened? And then I realized I blanked out somehow. And then my brain just went like, hey, you did 4 dishes, go play at a show, you know? And then I'm like, I have to force myself, like, I was doing something, I have to go back. And then I get distracted again, and I do 2 more dishes, and then it takes me an hour and a half, for fuck's sakes, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, it's so hard. Your brain just does what it wants. So to have that opportunity just to stop on your tracks and say, hey, what am I doing? And why am I doing it? It's such a weird but necessary thing.
Yeah, it is, and it's one of those tools. A tool that you can use is called hyper focusing, and it's doing something completely focused for a certain amount of time, and then rewarding yourself with a break. So, if
Mm,
let's say doing the dishes, if you know that you can't concentrate on the dishes for more than 10 minutes, and then you have to do something else for 5 minutes, you do those dishes as much as you can for 10 minutes, have a timer so you can visually see that,
mm,
and then stop at that 10-minute mark, do something else for 5 minutes, go back to that 10-minute mark again, and then slowly your mental strength and your discipline will be like, oh, 10 minutes, that's nothing, I can do 15, I can do 20, I can do 35. And then that's how you will grow that discipline, and that's how you would grow your mental strength on that one subject. Now apply that with life and you're perfect.
mm. Now, is there something like you have your own experiences, but you see other people do that you're like, wow, like I respect the commitment it takes, where if it be an athlete or let's say an astronaut, is there a particular example for even you're impressed with the commitment needed to do something?
Oh yes, a ton of things. The most recently is I just met some Navy SEALs recently,
Mm,
and to be a Navy SEAL, it's such an impressive feat that people don't realize how mentally tough you have to be a SEAL.
mm,
And I don't know anybody, nobody that would say being a Navy SEAL is easy or that's not impressive. Like the things they go through just in their training alone, I couldn't do that.
Now explain, because for me there's a gap. For me, like it's kind of like generalized a bit, but explain why is Navy SEALs that impressive for those people who don't know what they have to do.
So the Navy SEALs is a special force of the Navy. So every branch has its special forces. We have the Marine Corps, we have the Marine Raiders, the Navy, they have the Navy SEALs. A snippet of what the Navy SEALs go through, you can see in the movie American Sniper. He was a Navy SEAL. That
Okay.
was a little bit of how their actual training is. They get drowned, they have to swim for miles, they train constantly. They're always at 100%, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Now there is probably a fine line though that to go through that kind of like traumatism, could it is there a risk that that self-discipline can turn into something else that is negative though?
Yes, I think so, but mostly no, because these instructors are really good at what they do. And then
Mm,
they know if they're not mentally there, they wouldn't bother putting them through that harsh thing. They'll just be like, "Hey, maybe this isn't the right thing for you at this time. Maybe you should train a little more before accepting or trying to go for this." So that's the negative part, but the positive part is like, hey, you're doing a good job, but it's just not at this level. Like you're not
mm.
bad, you're just not at this level. And people have to realize that just because I'm not at their level does not mean I'm not good. It just means I'm not there yet.
There, yeah. And is there sometimes, at times you have to say to yourself, I'll never be there yet? Or is the word never an impossible word to you?
Yeah, that's an impossible word because Never is not even a fathomable thing. Like there is nothing that you can say that will be never. If you put your mind to it, you can do anything. Like if you look at our world today, there is 15 through entered age here that are millionaires, that are billionaires, that are self-made by doing the things that they love. And sometimes it was like, I would never be that. Like, why won't you be that? You can just do it and you will
Mm.
become that.
Now the question is, do you want to become like that? Right? It's never is going on your skill set, but there's also will I be happy if I'm like that? Right? Uh,
Exactly, exactly. Money is like people always say they want to do it for the money, but money is not the sole reason. You should do things to be happy, and being happy, that's going to make you a better person. That's going to make you stronger or healthier, or however you want to look at it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's true. Like, I oddly enough, my girlfriend says often, like, I wish we can win the lotto and win millions. Yes, having a lot of money would be useful, but I'm not sure I would be happy. Like, there's this old saying, money does not buy happiness, and it's true. Because you can see that even millionaires have a lot, even maybe more problems than the rest of the folks, right? Because once you have that money, you can lose it as fast as you gain it, right?
Oh, yes, 100%. And there are, like you said, there are people, there are millionaires. My wife, she just told me about Kylie Jenner. She's a billionaire. And she said herself, this her lifestyle, she doesn't feel like that's her happiness anymore. Like she can't handle that. And even though she has all this money and all this fame, she doesn't even want that. And there's some people that'll be like, "Oh, I would wish to be like that," or she's complaining for no reason. Like, no, money cannot solve all your problems. Happiness will be your one cure all.
Yeah, and that's a problem of fantasizing, right? When you fantasize, you kind of lose track of reality and you just see this like money will solve because you don't have enough money. So it's kind of like easy to interpret that I don't have money. If I would have some, my things would be solved. But it's a fantasy because real life is a lot more gray than black and white. And
Mhm.
navigating through the little things, money or no money, we're all human. We all have the same problems, the same emotional journey of like, as every 10 years, you're kind of hit reality of like, shit, I'm getting older and closer to death than life.
Yeah.
And we all go through that. And money, unless, the technology actually is there to transfer your consciousness into AI and stuff, we're not there yet. Um, but, money cannot buy you the inevitable, which is not dying, right? So we all go through these emotions, and even I find to have certain people who do have money, or you're born into money, you actually don't have sometimes the discipline needed to actually live correctly, because to manage all that power and money, you need to understand yourself 100% or very close to be able to still get a grasp of reality.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where your mental toughness comes into play as well, because I think that people that compare themselves to these millionaires or billionaires or people that are just simply rich, that's
Mhm.
taking a hit or a notch out of your mental self every single time you compare yourself. Like,
Mm.
only focus on what you're good at, or only focus on your good qualities or your bad qualities, or working to fix those qualities that you don't like. You should
Mm.
never compare yourself, because your mental strength will decline, and it will just keep going on until you figure out that that's not what makes you happy.
Yeah, and for someone who's listening, right, and they're exactly that spot that they have to focus on something that makes them happy. What would be your best suggestion for them to what they should ask themselves to actually find what makes them happy?
My best suggestion to find what makes you happy: if you do something without a second thought and you do not regret that second thought in the least bit, that
Mm.
is your happiness. You should take that, you should run with it, and you should never give it up, because your happiness is the only thing that you can keep, that nobody else can take from you.
Mm. Yeah, and that kind of even be said with your mental health, because your brain to decide, right? So
Exactly.
your mental happiness is really the only thing you set for yourself and you determine, right? Because
Mhm.
everything else is pretty much set for you sometimes, and most of the time sorry it's against you, right? That's
Yeah.
human nature to blame others, but yourself, right? So and that's actually one thing that'd be interesting to talk about is how do you get rid of that, right? Because let's say you're the military, the Marines, you have to stop thinking about self and start thinking about as a unit, as a group. How do
Exactly.
you how do you go against that human nature of blaming others but yourself?
To go against it is it's actually really it's a difficult process to go against it because in the Marine Corps, we are not a we're just a bolt. We're a bolt in a machine. And
Mm,
everyone else has to do their job correctly for that machine to grow. And once you understand that you doing your small part or your large part is part of a huge organization, that's how the Marine Corps works. And that's why it's so successful in what we do. So finding that, you just have to realize what piece of the puzzle you are and how do you make yourself that best piece that can be.
and can you give an example of something you lived through that there was a situation that usually you would blame others or blame your superior, but you had to self-reflect onto yourself that maybe it's more you. Is there like a per se example you can give that you lived through?
Um yeah, sure. So when you're teaching new Marines, you have to make sure to go step by step. Like I told you, like make sure you understand why everything is happening.
Mm,
So if we're doing training and we're firing mortars, which are just like handheld bombs,
mm,
and I give them their data and their everything they need to know to fire it, but they don't know how to fire it, and I'm getting blamed for it. I should be getting blamed for it because I
mm.
didn't teach them properly. If I don't teach them properly, then they don't know how to properly do their training. So that's like just a small example. But if you times this, if they don't know how to do their training because I didn't train them, then if this was a combat scenario, there would be Marines, there'd be people losing their lives because a simple mistake that I made. And it's not the mistake of them because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and that requires a lot of self acceptance and responsibility because you said it yourself. You're almost like responsible for their own security and how they think on the battlefield or in certain situations, right? So there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to get this shit right.
Exactly. And all that pressure is relieved when you know you taught them correctly and you see the outcome of the process that you put them through.
And is there moments that you've tried your best, but it didn't accomplish as you wished? And how did you handle if ever did that did happen?
No, I don't really have that experience. I'm very, very fortunate for that, but I have seen there's some Marines that they put their all into something. Just like if you go through boot camp, there's some people that they try their hardest to adapt. They try their hardest to shoot correctly. They try their hardest to drill, but they can't do it. Like they physically can't do it, and they don't want to give up, but you're forced to leave because you can't adapt.
And what's the difference between those people who do succeed and like those people who try their hardest but just can't do it? I- Is it what they're saying to themselves? Is it what's happening internally, or it just was never meant to be?
It's 100% what's happening internally. Like these
Mm,
people, you can't take somebody away from everything they know for
mm.
3 months with little to no contact with the outside world and them not be a little depressed or them not feeling sad for themselves or sorry for themselves or loaning to be back with their family. Like it was their mental state that drove them not to go through and pass boot camp.
Mm. All right, but look, this is pretty much the end of our conversation today. But look, Mr. Hall, thank you very much for your point of view. I definitely have some notes to take because, again, there's a lot of things I have to apply either work wise or even at home that I definitely need to work on. And it was a very, very interesting conversation. So, again, thank you very much, Mr. Hall. If people want to contact you, want to follow you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at InspireHolics. You can, and thank you for having me here. It was very interesting experience, and I would love to be back.
Yeah, but you said you were a gamer, right?
Oh yeah, of course I'm a gamer.
So I'll probably be doing a gaming one soon. I'll invite you in because I'm a gamer, but I'm very specific in the games I play. So I'm interested to have a conversation with someone who's probably a bit more broader than than I am.
Oh yeah, of course, 100%. Hit me up anytime.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Orlando. How you take care and you stay safe. Bye
All
bye.
right, thank you.
All right.